MechWarrior 5 Clans is the first time in nearly 30 years we get to have a story-driven campaign experience as a member of one of the clan's Mech Warriors. At Trueborn Warrior, we are pursuing the clan's agenda. And it's been, like I said, nearly 30 years since we've had that. As such, while there are definitely some old-timers like myself, fans of the Battletech setting all this time, that, are glad to see this, there's also going to be players who are pretty new to this setting overall, if not completely new, to play this game. After all, it's multi-platform. It was included as part of Game Pass as well. So, chances are there'll be people kind of new to the Battletech setting getting immersed in both the Battletech setting as it stands overall, and then more deeply into the clan's way of doing things, which is pretty different from standard inner sphere, great houses and stuff situation. So, while the game does a good job of explaining everything, in my opinion, especially over the course of the campaign, it can still be a little bit confusing to navigate when you're brand new to a setting. We all know this from being brand new to settings at any one given time. So, in an effort to try to help that, I want to go over something that's I consider kind of basic but crucial to the clans and the game and everything else, because we were made for this. What's up, everybody? I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem, and I'm going to be going over what it means to be Trueborn. You're going to hear this a lot. And Trueborn and Freeborn are two very different things. In fact, Freeborn is a grave insult to Trueborn Warriors if you call them that. So what the heck is a Trueborn? What's going on with the clans with this? What's a little bit of backstory around it? My aim is to go over this in a very basic primer style setup, just so you can go, oh, okay, if you happen to be lost. And it'll be a good foundation for you to springboard off of if you so desire to learn more. So let's get to it. To understand this, we have to understand the clans. And we're not going to go super in-depth at all into this. In fact, I'm going to water and boil everything down. So I'm lumping all the clans together in a very basic sense. I say this because I do know there are clans that do things differently from other clans. There are some clans that I consider pretty radical in their viewpoints, other clans that I consider perhaps very ultra-conservative in certain viewpoints. Either way, I'm boiling it all down so they're all going to be discussed as if they were the same in this video. I'm aware they are not. With that said, we could overgeneralize clan society and oversimplify everything to be a militaristic style society that is a caste-based-ish driven society where the ruling caste is the warrior caste. Now, it's not a situation of perfect harmony amongst the clans and all their castes. In fact, there are certain things like the society, which is beyond the scope of this video, which shows that it's definitely not harmonious. But in my personal opinion, in comparison to how things are in the inner sphere, I feel things are closer to that harmony concept, or looking at it a bit more so, in the form of the clans in an overarching respect. Of course, opinions vary. In any case, what this means is the warrior caste is the ruling caste. So all other castes exist and perform actions to support the warrior caste. The warrior caste guides, leads, and protects the other castes of the clan.
Although you might want to watch your language, Liam.
So you have an inherent kind of teamwork makes the dream work scenario, even though the warrior caste has definitely a chip on its shoulder of arrogance and believing they are the bestest thing ever because part of their society is very militaristic and that's their viewpoint. So that's all well and good, but what does this mean for Trueborn? Well, what it means is that they only exist in the warrior caste. You see, technology for the clans is advanced. It's more advanced than inner sphere technology. And this is in all aspects, and in particularly so in their biological genetics eugenics situation. They are very advanced there. And what started off kind of out of necessity at the early days of the clans became part of a, kind of a cultural practice thing and specialized, and that is the art of creating a person. That's right, Trueborn Warriors are artificially conceived in an iron womb and gestated and birthed forth to be raised and trained for battle. They are bred and trained from birth for battle, quite literally. Now, this has tremendous moral and ethical kind of implications and gray areas for sure, especially in society like ours and like the inner sphere of Battletech. But the clans had a need of this. It was a necessity that had them move beyond these ethical conundrums and go for it. And their technology was there to do so. So what we have is artificially created people, artificially conceived, but otherwise, as Data would say, they are fully functional and anatomically correct. All Trueborn Warriors are. So they're very much a human, but it goes beyond that. It's not just they pick the best genetic stuff from the gene pool to create them. They do that too, which is another genetic ethical situation, right? But on top of that, they're not just standard people either, quote unquote. They're genetically altered or enhanced in one of several different ways, depending upon which phenotype of warrior you're looking at, because the clan's genetic program can make 3 kind of original basic phenotypes that others would spawn from, but these are kind of the 3 core ones, if you will. So we will briefly go over that in a moment, but let's recap real quick. Trueborn Warriors are test tube babies. They're artificially conceived in what's referred to as an iron womb, where they reach maturity on a birth. Well, maturity, right? They are gestated and they birth forth. And from the moment they are birthed forth, they are raised, educated, and trained for their station. Obviously, you can't teach a baby how to pilot an aircraft or something, but you get my point. So that is what a Trueborn Warrior is at its most basic level. But as I mentioned, they don't just pick the genetic heritage, they also are artificially enhanced as well. The genetics, right, are enhanced over generations. This has happened to result in the phenotypes we know of circa 3050. This is done utilizing what's referred to as genetic legacy, by the way. That's the gene pool for Trueborn Warriors. It's called genetic legacy, and only the best of the warrior caste and those considered particularly worthy are a part of their genetics, are a part of this repository or bank, if you will. And it is added to over time because the clan geneticists realize that diversity is important for a gene pool, and I really appreciate that touch. In any case, phenotypes. We have 3 different phenotypes of Trueborn Warrior made, and they are definitely made in one of these 3 phenotypes, more or less. They don't just make a standard person, quote unquote. So, what are they? Well, let's start off with probably a lesser known phenotype, the aerospace pilot. The aerospace pilot is a phenotype of warrior that's a Trueborn Warrior, and they have genetic alterations that manifest physically, meaning you can look at an aerospace pilot Trueborn and recognize them as being such because they do look different from a quote-unquote normal person or standard human. And they are frailer in overall makeup than a standard human. Not because they're sickly or anything like that, but it's just part of their process of their genetic engineering. Whatever their internal body structure is like necessitated this because they are pilots and therefore they are engineered to better resist extreme G-forces, which is something you would want to have in a pilot, right? But on top of that, their craniums and their eyes are noticeably larger. This is due to their enhanced reaction time and their enhanced perception. Or not so much due to, I guess you could say due to it. In order to get enhanced perception, they gave them bigger eyes. I mean, there's more to that than just that, obviously, but this is how it's manifesting in terms of the lore of an aerospace pilot Trueborn. Larger cranium, larger eyes. All this stuff is beneficial, of course, for a pilot. Now, that's one Trueborn phenotype. A second Trueborn phenotype is much more well known, and it is also altered in such a way you can tell just by looking at them. They're physically altered, and this is the elemental warrior. Bred for battle in battle armor, known as elemental battle armor as well, they make excellent ground force shock troop style of combatants. They have immense strength, stamina, and endurance and all that because they are enhanced in such a capacity that they are noticeably larger and disproportionately so, larger and more muscular than a standard human. But to look at them and think that's all they are is a deadly mistake. They are also trained and educated from birth. They are no slouches in the mental department, although you might think so by looking at them because it's kind of a prejudice to think that way in different settings, both fantasy, mostly fantasy and some sci-fi. Much like Astartes, although nowhere near as enhanced, To think that they are dim-witted would prove to be a fatal mistake. They are quite intelligent. And lastly, is the phenotype most probably well known because you play as this in all the different mech warrior games. Whether you are clan or inner sphere, you play as a mech warrior. Well, there's a mech warrior phenotype for the clans of Trueborn Warriors. This phenotype looks the most standard, right? If you had them standing next to a standard human from the inner sphere, you wouldn't really be able to tell a difference other than that they are incredibly fit and have no perceived flaw, quote unquote, outside of whatever injuries they may have sustained. This is not only due to their genetic makeup, but also due to a strict regimen of physical fitness alongside everything else. But it doesn't mean the inner sphere wouldn't be equally in shape. It definitely could be, right? All I'm saying is, if you pick a random Trueborn Warrior and a random standard human from the inner sphere, that might be the only thing that you would tell between the two, because they look the most normal. However, well, quote unquote normal, standard, how about that? However, they are enhanced to have improved reflexes, as well as better integration with the neural helmets worn by mech warrior pilots to help control the battle mechs. So they have enhanced integration with that, plus superior neural helmets because clan tech is better tech. So that leads to having a natural extra advantage for piloting their mechs, on top of being immensely well trained. So those are the three phenotypes of warriors, all of which are created. Some blood names, some genetic legacy is specific to elementals or specific to aerospace pilots or mech warriors, and others are universal. Now, these Trueborn Warriors are not created one at a time. They're not bespoke creations in that capacity. They are created in batches, and each one is issued what's known as a codex, which is most often a bracelet, but could be a necklace, I suppose, but it's most often a bracelet. This is their resume and their genetic makeup. It's their recipe and their resume all rolled into one in their bracelet. They also have a central data node that updates as well, but they wear with them their entire career. Anything good and bad that has happened to them is recorded, in regards to different campaigns and training and whatever else, as well as their physical makeup, because genetic purity is important as well. So one look at their codex and you know exactly how they were made and how their career went, wherever they might be in that career, which is pretty interesting. So they are communally raised in what's referred to as a creche for the most part. Some clans have more of a family style unit to raise newborn Trueborns, but we're boiling everything down, so we have a creche as communal raising of Trueborns. They are educated and trained, I suppose, as best they can be, because they are younglings after all. Once they reach right around the beginnings of double digits as a youngling, they are split up into different sibling companies referred to as Sibco, and they're referred to as Sibkin. And each Sibco is going to be the closest thing most clan Trueborn Warriors will have to a family unit, and they tend to form strong bonds, family-style ties and bonds, if you will, to their fellow Sibkin of their Sibco. However, it only gets more rigorous in training and education from there, because they are brought up to believe in their inherent superiority. It's drilled into them. They truly believe as Trueborn Warriors they are superior to standard people, and that they are the only real inheritors of the vision of Alexander Kerensky, kind of the granddad, if you will, of the clans. So, gonna put a bit of a chip on their shoulder and have them kind of stand a little bit taller around everybody else and always have something to prove. On top of that, they are trained and they are educated. So every Trueborn Warrior is going to be very well spoken, right? They have that type of education on top of their tactics and training. They're not slouches. In fact, the clans, as a random side note, love language. Anyway, when it comes to Trueborn Warrior training, it's intense. Live fire exercises all the time, immense behavioral discipline that would not fly today, and just intense, consistent, rigorous, exhaustive training. This will result in fatalities in the Sibco, which is to be expected. This will also result in different Trueborn Warriors failing out. Failing out for many is a fate worse than death. They would rather die trying to stay in than become a common laborer or other type of civilian caste. Because if you fail out of the warrior caste, you're not executed, but you now utilize your skills to service the clan. as a member of one of the civilian castes, which is interesting, right? But in any case, that's all going to happen during their training. Then, once they reach about 20 years of age, so roughly after a decade's worth of intense, ridiculous training, they undergo a trial of position. Now, a trial of position is one of several different combat trials of the clans. And when you do your very first one, is to secure your place as a Trueborn Warrior, because you went through all this training. However, if you don't pass this test, you are not a warrior, and you are basically, again, washing out into one of the civilian castes if you don't die. So while their training is very intense and is live fire combat, it's not necessarily about killing the opponent. It's about achieving victory. And if the opponent dies in the process, or if you die in the process of failing, then so be it. That is the way of things, to weed out the weak, is their viewpoint. It's a very kind of a intense viewpoint. In any case, after the trial of position, should you be successful, you are recognized as a Trueborn Warrior. There's a little bit more to it, but we're not worried about it. That is what a Trueborn Warrior is. And in fact, in MechWarrior 5 Clans, we see the end of the Civco training, and we actually partake in our own trial of position, which is pretty cool. Now, with that said, this results in a kind of a high attritional rate of training. So the end result is a smaller but more elite group of warriors that are recognized as full-fledged Trueborn Warriors, and that is definitely true. The clan's philosophy is superior technology, superior warriors, superior training. Smaller number but superior in all things to overcome adversity is how they do things. And it's basically works for them. Yes, mileage varies depending on different clans, but it more or less works out pretty effectively, and the Inner Sphere felt that in the clan invasion. In any case, the last thing I want to go over is the Iron Womb, because the Iron Womb is a very interesting bit of lore. It started off originally as a life support system for premature babies, which I think is a fantastic kind of level of depth in this setting, because unfortunately, premature babies are a real thing that happen, and we do our best to get them to survive. But obviously, we can always do better, because it's not a perfect thing right now. Well, in the Battletech lore, centuries before the clans would become the clans, this was created, this Iron Womb, as life support for premature babies. In essence, it is an artificial womb. And theoretically, even back then, it could artificially conceive of a person. And for moral and ethical reasons, it never was pursued past just life support. But it worked great for its role. Well, eventually the clans would take it further upon research and improve this science and this technology, and would create the Iron Womb to create the Trueborn Warriors eventually. And it took generations of basically selectively being bred artificially, but we would have Trueborn phenotypes come into existence with artificial selection in that regards, as well as deliberate genetic enhancements throughout. So the fact that this has been going on for centuries in the clans, and the end result is a person who is fully functional and anatomically correct, as per data would say, or as per what data would say, and they have no need for supplemental injections or any type of special IVs to stay functioning. It's not like they're going to fall apart. They don't get special medicine, but they just function as if they were, naturally created, more or less. I think is a testament to the scientific capability of the clans, especially in regards to the biological genetics programming. So that is what a Trueborn Warrior is. It's a lot to unpack. I went over quite a few different things. Went a little bit longer than I would have liked, but this is the basics. And when you understand all this, or not when you understand all this, but in hearing all this, it kind of helps set the stage a little bit for why the clans, and specifically the Trueborn Warriors of the clans, view things the way they do. Because they've literally were made for this. They were made for their combat, and they were trained from the moment they can remember. And they are inherently superior warriors right off the get-go. So they take what they do very seriously, and to them is not just a career path. It's also crucial to the core of their culture, which leads to a lot of very intense viewpoints on things. In any case, that's all I got for you. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to check out this video. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed yourself, as well as checking out the link to my Twitch channel. I do stream MechWarrior and non-MechWarrior stuff there, so if you want to be a part of that, you're more than welcome to as well. I encourage it. And with all that being said, share your thoughts, your questions, any requests, anything like that in the comment section. And until next time, take care.